And I forgot to change the volume. So let me change that really quick. All right, there we go. What's up, everybody? This is Moose and Brian here from OccupyFantasy.com, at OccupyFantasy on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. We're there. I'm here with Brian at Brian Jester FF on Twitter, co-founder and CEO of Occupy Fantasy. What's up, Brian?
What's up, Moose? You pulled one of my tricks and had some technical difficulties at the top of the show. So what's up?
Not too much. Yeah, I due to the Washington football team's retiring Sean Taylor's number tomorrow, so I came over to the parents' house. They got the awesome original Washington Post plaques as when the Redskins won the Super Bowl. So pretty
Super
cool to
sick.
have it in the background.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Love that stuff. I mean, our for those who obviously don't know, except me and Moose, our parents' basement's pretty Redskins football team heavy. So yeah, lots of memorabilia down there, and I think that those are probably my favorite plaques because is that the um who's on the plaques there, Moose?
Uh, my eyes are so bad. Doug Williams.
Yeah, Doug Williams is the one I was thinking of. Yeah,
Yeah, he's just cheering here.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty awesome. David has a question here. Could you guys take a couple extra minutes at the end of the stream to show how to upload CSV lineups to FanDuel and DraftKings? Brian, I believe we're having a video pretty soon on the DFS Magic channel on how to do that, right?
Yeah, we're gonna release that video. We honestly should have had it done already, but Tuesday or Wednesday we'll have that up. In the meantime, Jack is putting instructions in the Discord for how to do that. So, David, be sure to check out the Discord today.
Yeah. What's up, Leon? What's up, Matt? What's up, everybody? We're here to break down Week 6 from a DFS perspective on FanDuel, DraftKings, and Yahoo. Brian, let's just jump right into it. You and I were talking before the show. We've been talking throughout the week. It started off a little chaosy at the beginning. Now I actually things seem very clear, and I actually really like the slate.
Yeah, it was yeah, a little unnerving throughout the week, right? We got some of the running back injuries. The underperforming list didn't look that great, but like you said, as we sit here Saturday afternoon, for tournaments at least, there are 3 to 4 very clear game stacks. It's not like last week where we were trying to pick different sides of games to stack. This week looks very clear. The running back position is beautiful. There's so many different running backs to play that are great plays that we can get plenty of exposure to, and the model likes a couple other spots that for tight end and receiver. So I'm really pumped about this week. I think it's honestly a pretty straightforward strategy, and depending on the type of contest you're playing. But that's what we're here. We're here to break it down for everyone. If you guys have questions throughout the show, you all guide it. So if you have specific questions, let's hear it and we'll answer them.
Definitely. So we're here until 2:30. So if you have questions about game stacks, lineup strategy, lineup advice, uh, anything, go ahead and ask. That's why we're here for these 30 minutes. Brian, I wanted to pick your brain, and we can even show this behind the paywall. The first game that Chris wrote up is the Chiefs at the Washington football team. We're Washington football team home. At least our parents are, with a bunch of memorabilia. So we got to talk about them. They're retiring Sean Taylor's number. From a fan's perspective, from a fanalist perspective, how much do you think that it actually impacts the retiring one of the greatest safeties numbers of all time?
I mean, it's we're not even going to get into the whole logistics around the retiring, right? But as a team, you're generally fired up. But as outsiders, it's tough to tell how that impacts the team, right? At least personally, when I played sports before I was old, any emotional situation or event like that, it can go a couple of different ways. You can either go out and just completely ball, or you're so emotionally invested that you drain your energy in the first 7 seconds and then you're done for the rest of the game,
Yeah.
right? At least for me, it's been either way. So, we can't really predict what's going to happen outside of that. But what we do know is this game has the highest total of the week. It's with two defenses that literally don't know how to play defense. I don't know how. I'm surprised how both coordinators are still employed. And this week especially, it's the first time we get to answer these questions. There's wind in the forecast in some games. Fortunately, this game, it doesn't look like is going to reach that 15-mile-per-hour mark that we start to pull back on stacks and passing games. So it has that going for it as well. So all in all, this definitely looks like the best game to stack.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned about wind in some games, and I can't remember who posted it, Brian. You probably know who it was. But basically, they showed a chart, which we've said before and before. Once it hits 15, it drops off pretty considerably for quarterback scoring.
Yeah, and if our friends over at Number Fire, we love shouting them out because they have data from FanDuel side, and there's overall good dudes over there. And I think they just posted an article recently, or retweeted an article about showing the impacts of wind on passing games. And once you reach 15 miles per hour or more, the odds of a quarterback hitting 3x salary on FanDuel, which is kind of the tournament threshold we look for, plummets to 14%.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, that's a crazy number, and it's pretty consistent. And most it falls in line with those high level heuristics that we talk about that makes the game easier. Running back has a high ankle sprain, we're not going to play him. Game with 15 miles per hour wind, we're not going to play the passing games. It's just, if you obviously there are going to be outliers where that doesn't hold true, but over the course of your entire NFL DFS career, multiple seasons, you hold true to those rules, you're going to come out ahead more often than not. And the 15 miles per hour wind situation is a really big impact.
Yeah, you pretty much hit that. And yeah, and shout out Number Fire. That's who it was. All right, we got some questions here in the chat. First one from Wayne says, Miles Gaskins, I don't get it. He only looked good one game. Now people think he's a good running back now.
We're kind of insulated from other people's thoughts, so I haven't heard people say Miles Gaskin's a good running back. His performance last week was amazing, but it was incredibly tilting to exclude him from my bringbacks in that game because, like you said, he played like 5 snaps the week before, then all of a sudden they feature him. So that's a very difficult running back room to try to figure out.
Yeah, nothing more tilting than getting the running back wrong. Brian with a Y says, I love y'all's lineup builder. Does the OF index consider ownership?
Fantastic question, Brian. Yes, OF Index does consider ownership. And for some positions, like running back, where we know it's important, it might boost OF Index. Other positions where it's more volatile, receiver, tight end, it may decrease in OF Index if a player is more popular. So I can't give you the exact formula behind it, but yes, ownership does impact OF Index, which is why you'll see when the model is released on Wednesday night, and then by the time we get ownership plugged in on Friday, you will see OF index values change for different players, and that's a big reason for it.
Yep, definitely. Now, and that just shows that if you see a wide receiver or a running back or really any position that when you check it on Wednesday, and we do have the OF change column that's from Wednesday to current, and if you see a 35% wide receiver and his OF index change is positive, even though with that high ownership, you're like, all right, this is definitely a good play. I got to at least match the field on this.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I don't know. Are you able to pull up the running back model really quickly, Moose?
Sure.
Yeah. Just because I know it's behind the paywall, but I do want to point out, and this is a nice transition because Khalil Herbert's a great example of this, where we get the Damian Williams COVID news on Thursday. The model updates. Khalil Herbert ranks pretty decently high, but our ownership hadn't caught up yet. And then the ownership kind of confirms that. And running back's a position where it does confirm it. And Herbert, as you see, his OF index moved up 24 points as a result. And Moose, how rare is it that we see a $4,600 running back as a top 4 option on the slate?
I actually can't remember the last time that was the case. It's been a while. So smash play. Normally, like any other week, it would be like lock smash play. But you talked about there's so many other mid-price running backs. I don't think you should lock him necessarily, but you definitely should be playing a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, Daryl Williams is a question that .bets has in here. Would you only play Daryl Williams in KC stacks? No, I don't think so, because he's likely going to get goal line work in the passing game for one of the highest powered offenses in the league, and especially on this slate. And he's only 4,900 on DraftKings, so I think you have to consider him. And all that in mind was speaking of not seeing a $4,600 running back near the top. We don't see a $6,200 running back at the very top ever, right? It's always like a McCaffrey, Dalvin, Eckler type running back. Derrick Henry. It's Kareem Hunt this week, who's the cover boy of the plug, going to be incredibly popular. A guy you should have incredibly heavy exposure to.
Pretty much, yeah. Couple questions here from Wayne says, chances of Anu and Austin being good wide receivers in the Jacksonville game.
And he says, in that game, are you picking anyone lower than 2,600 Tavon Austin on DraftKings? So that's the single game London slate. This is mostly main slate discussion, but I'll pull it up for you. Let me do a quick research here, Wayne, and I'll answer that question in a sec.
While we're doing that, Jake is trashing the football team, saying, how did it take so long to retire Sean Taylor's number? It's blasphemy.
Yeah, well, they had to wait for some negative press before they could retire it. You know how that goes.
Yeah. Ken has a question here. Says, what would you consider a cheap stack piece? The Charger studs are all expensive, so does that mean you'll be having a good amount of gut in Cook?
Yeah, that makes it tough, right? That's one factor for that game. For me, how I define a cheap piece is less than 5K on DraftKings, less than 6K on FanDuel. So it's not like some super cheap piece, but at least moderately priced. So yeah, it's either having Guyton and Cook or cheaper Ravens pieces. That game does make it tough for the cheap piece theory for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
Sorry, just going back to the question really quickly. Um, the Miami Jacksonville game. Yeah, Malcolm Brown is certainly in play. Carlos Hyde. Um, Albert Wilson, since Devontae Parker is out once again. You have to monitor inactives there because Preston Williams is banged up too. So yeah, certainly guys below 2,600 I would play. I'm always looking to play those guys anyways. So yeah, there are certainly players in that range. Wayne.
Brian says if Mike Williams out.
Yes, let's monitor that too because the Mike Williams he didn't practice really this week, and the the kind of the tone of Brandon Staley's conference or quotes about Mike Williams wasn't great. It says knee swelled up. We're trying to monitor over the next couple of days. It didn't sound great. I wouldn't be surprised if he sits. That obviously impacts that game. It just means we get more Jalen Guyton, like Ken just mentioned, and also rookie Josh Palmer, who, if he played preseason DFS, was targeted heavily when he was on the field. So that it might suck that we can't play Mike Williams, but it could be a blessing in disguise for tournaments if we're playing cheap pieces from that game.
Yep. Pretty much. Yeah, yeah. And it just shows how much, even on main slates, you have to monitor. You always got to monitor inactives because you never know. What's up, Carl? He says, "Where is Moose? Is he at a library? I'm in a basement." So, what's up,
Very
Carl?
close to. I mean, given what's behind you, is very close to a library-esque
Yeah,
background.
exactly. Yeah. Um, Wayne says, "Is it safe to assume you're going to attack all the highest scoring games in your lineup, such as the Rams, Colts, KC, and Baltimore?"
Yeah, for the most part. Check our plug. The top stacks in there is pretty much what I'm going to stack this week. So
Yep. Dot Best says, Hopkins is top of the wide receiver model. With the windy conditions expected, are you including him in your player pool or staying away from the Arizona Cleveland wide receivers?
yeah, and Michael Dixon in the chat follows right up with saying his gut's telling him to stack the Cardinals and Cleveland game, but he's happy there's wins, so ownership should be low. Yeah, so I mean you can stack it all you want, Michael. I will say the game total has decreased by at least 5 points since it opened, which is generally a sign that you should stay away from that game, especially from a stacking perspective. Right? It literally has dropped 5 points from 53.5 to 48.5. When we get questions about weather and we're looking ourselves at games to analyze and we try to figure out if weather is a factor, that's pretty much the telltale sign that weather will be a factor if the total drops that much. Normally we see it on Sunday mornings with like snow or rain or heavy winds that the forecast has changed, but throughout the week it's dropped 5 points. So as a game environment, I won't play it. But to answer Dot Bet's question, someone like Hopkins who gets goal line looks, whose average depth of target isn't that high compared to some other receivers, he can still get there. And I think our model likes it for the fact that in a win game, those lower A dot receivers do rack up targets and receptions. Very easily could see a game like 10 for 100 for one for Hopkins, and the win doesn't affect that. But as far as the entire game goes, Moose, that's kind of tough to bank on everyone hitting above their value when the wind it really impacts it. Because we saw that in Cleveland last year, a lot of games were affected by the wind.
Yeah, and it's so tough for because one player can always go off in the game. The fact that you're going to need 4-3 to go off in a low scoring game, the scoring has to be so concentrated on just those three people,
Yes.
or four people. It's going to be very tough.
Not to mention, and maybe this is a positive considering how much we shit on Cliff Kingsbury. But Kingsbury's out with COVID, and whoever their second play caller is out with COVID, so they're kind of going with like a committee approach at the offensive play caller position tomorrow. So I mean that's never great. I don't think it's going to change the horizontal raid offense that we joke about, but heavy wins and your top two play callers are down. Certainly makes it tough.
It's literally they're literally just going to go have like an Xbox on the side with Madden, and Madden's going to tell them what plays to pick, and they're just going to be like, all right, we're
Dude,
going to go with this one.
honestly, it would be better than what Kingsbury does sometimes.
Pretty much. Uh, Best defense between would you rather have Colts or Cowboys for main slate?
DraftKings, yeah, our model likes the Colts, and I know that's a cop-out answer because they're the most popular defense on the slate, but they're our fourth-ranked defense in our model, so I'll side with the Colts.
Cool, cool. Speaking of the Colts, what percent do you think they're going to be owned in the survivor pools this week?
That's the $1 million question, literally, right? We're trying to figure out if they're going to be 50% plus, we're avoiding them. But Moose, if everyone thinks our way and they avoid them, then maybe we got to play them. So I got to figure they're super high. I don't see any other way where they're less than 50%, but I've been shocked before.
Yeah, I mean, if y'all are in a survivor pool, Um, I pray for you all this week.
It's tough, man. It's rough out here in these streets.
I know. I was looking at it before. I'm just kind of talking while we're waiting for some more questions. But dude, Survivor's hard. Like week 8, week 10 looks tough when teams start going on buys, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be terrible. I really don't want to have to root for like a Houston week 18.
Houston won't even be a franchise by week 18, so might have to think of somebody else by then.
Definitely. What's up, Eddie? I came in at the perfect time for Colts talk. Yeah. I'm surprised you're here, still here after that Colts loss the other night.
Dude, that was rough for Colts fans for sure.
And not for Baltimore fans. Let's go.
Absolutely not.
Tron says, with a shorter slate, we get our first chance to see the scenario. No clear top plays, yet chalk will still be from as heavy as usual. Anyone you see as priority plays, or you're liking to hope the field steps into some chalky traps while you look from other ways to attack.
No, I think there's some pretty clear top plays, especially at running back, right? Like Kareem Hunt, Khalil Herbert, the guys that are getting ownership, Jonathan Taylor. Like, I think the chalk is pretty good this week, especially at running back, and we normally side with that anyways. And then I look to receiver, and it's like, how can I get different at receiver? That's a little trickier this week because Devontae Adams at 22 to 28%, depending on where you look, is also a fantastic play. Terry McLaurin, I guess we're a little bit worried about his hamstring. We have him as the second most popular receiver on DraftKings. Then we have some New England and Dallas receivers, Rams receivers. Like the chalk looks pretty good this week, which means, like it normally does, Moose, right? We're not looking to get super contrarian in NFL DFS Classic.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just hoping that our stacks pop off and, one or two low-owned receivers get there.
Or tight ends this week if you watch the video.
2 underperforming tight ends. I can't believe it.
Yeah, just game stack that game. But yeah, also about tight end, if there's so many, we say good plays with running back, wide receiver, we know the game stacks. How viable are just punting tight ends this week? Maybe two-part question: as just a one-off or as a part of your game stack.
Yeah, so normally it's like that's a fantastic idea. But we actually have some decent tight ends this week with Kelsey, Waller, and Mark Andrews on the slate. But I think a majority of lineups will do that. So it automatically makes your lineup different if you play one of the underperforming tight ends who are, in the 3K range. So I do like that idea, most for sure.
Yep. David says, which full PPR, which 2 do I go with? Higgins, Lamb, Waddle, or Cooks?
All right, Higgins, Lamb, Waddle, Cooks. And he's got to go with 2 or 1?
2.
All right. I'm a big fan of Cooks this week. So let me see here. I'm just going to look up some rankings real quick. Cooks, Waddle. Read me off the names again, Moose. Lamb.
And Higgins.
Give me CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks.
I was gonna say Higgins and Cooks, but yeah, so definitely Cooks is one of them.
Okay. Yes.
Couple questions here about Cincinnati, particularly Joe Mixon, or do you love anybody from that Cincinnati side?
It seems to be popular, and when I did the Roto Grinders podcast yesterday with my co-host Kirk Dees, he was big on the Cincinnati side of things too. And obviously when a player plays of his volume, you always want to take note of something they like. So I think a lot of people are going to be on the Cincinnati side just because, again, people are going to pick on Detroit. Zach Taylor said Joe Mixon is going to be back to his full workload, which I think is good, and he's practiced this week and he played last week. I'm not as concerned with his high ankle sprain as I was with Dalvin Cook's. So fortunately, I think Mixon's probably fine, and we have him ranked in the top 7-ish, and he's very affordable. So yeah, I'm a Joe Mixon fan this week. I don't mind playing him.
Nice.
And then I think the passing game has some good options as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to say yes to a Cincinnati stack, so I'm going to defer to Brian's answer on that one. Michael says, how do you feel about a Derek Carr and a Waller stack?
I mean, it's fine. It's not one of the game stacks I like, and generally, me personally, I like to stack the games in the high game total environments, and I'm looking to stack it with multiple players. So, I am personally not playing that stack. I would much rather play some of the guys we wrote up in the plug.
Brian says, Rondale Moore sneaky with max out and running more routes than Kirk last week.
Yeah, and he also kind of fits that mold of that lower A-dot receiver in the win that we talked about, right? I mean, his A-dot's like -12 or some shit. So, yeah, I like it. I don't know if he's sneaky just because I think, at least if you read on Twitter and some articles, that's pretty well known. Like, people have been making that point. But yeah, I think I would much rather play him than like AJ Green or Christian Kirk in that game.
Yeah. Great questions, everyone. Keep them coming. Again, we're here for about 10 more minutes or so. Ed says $100 single entry DraftKings GPP. It's Washington or Indy stack 2 contrarian with 5K or less entries. Don't want to get too cute, but also want the takedown.
No, I think Washington's fine. I would go with that one. It's part one of the three game stacks we like, and people don't play underdogs in the game stacks as much as they should. So I know you love Indy, Ed, and you want to play Indy stacks, but that could be a game where they control the clock and run it out. I would much rather play Washington, and I don't think it's too cute.
Yeah, and he follows up with Washington stack is Seals Jones or Humphreys, the Curtis Samuel piece.
Um, Definitely Seals Jones. Definitely Seals Jones.
Cool. Carl says, if you guys like cook so much, just watch the next Top Chef. I like you, Carl. Nice.
Noted, Carl. Thank you, sir.
Ian says, start Hollywood or Tony?
It's kind of, dude. Tony looked damn good last week. 200 yards.
Yeah.
Dude, it's. I mean, it's hard not to start Hollywood Brown at this point, just with his production and the way the offense is going. I say Hollywood Brown. Even though I know it's tough to sit Tony. I mean, you must have a stacked team if that's your final spot that you're considering.
Yeah. Super Monkey says, thoughts on the London game? I know you mentioned a couple people from Jacksonville side. Is there anyone else that you would target from that game?
Uh, I admittedly haven't looked at it too much, but I'm looking right now, just looking at our single game model to see what the model likes and see what the field might want to do. So in that game, Miami is a 2.5 point favorite. I do think James Robinson's going to be insanely popular in that game. So just think about that, how you get different if you play Robinson. Um, it's pretty rare, but both quarterbacks top the model by a decent margin, even on DraftKings. So playing the passing games and playing some cheap pieces with those quarterbacks, I think is probably the way I would look at just based on this 10 seconds of research.
True. Um, Chris says, what's your thoughts on the Chalk Lions defense as a punt on DraftKings?
I mean, it feels like we get this every week, right? And it never works out as far as like the chalk punt defense. Um, I mean, I don't think we need it this week. So if people want to play it, they can go for it. I'd much rather play, the other 10 defenses we have ranked higher in the model.
That's true, yeah. Stefan Diggs, what's up, man? He says, do you like Sutton this week?
Big fan of Sutton every week, especially with Judy out. So yeah, I like him, and I think he's always going to rank pretty highly given his air yards and his opportunities. So yeah, he's top 12 or so in the model. Yeah, big Sutton fan this week.
Nice. Matt says, Brian, what's your favorite Rams 3-1 stack, or are you just letting the builder do its thing there?
No, I'll be super picky about it, I'm sure. So probably because the one thing we haven't talked about is Daryl Henderson. He's in that group of amazing running back plays this week. So if people are playing him heavily, I doubt many people are going to stack the passing game. So to me, it's probably something like Stafford, Cup, Woods, and then one of the cheap Giants players.
Yeah, wow, yeah, I really like that actually. Now that you said it out loud,
Most of them. Let me write this note down real quick and get in my single entry.
I know. Yeah, definitely. Aaron says, Moose and Brian, what are your expected exposures to Patrick Mahomes? I usually do just I usually split all my quarterbacks equal among six, so like 15, 16%, 17, something like that.
Yep, we have the same strategy move. So yeah, I think one out of every six lineups for me, Aaron, and that's in 150. Obviously, you can play more if you're playing a lesser number of lineups.
Yep, definitely. Ann says, does playing a naked Lamar and playing Henderson a 3 entry make any sense?
Uh, and do you mean three total entries in the contest, like a three-man contest, or a three max, like larger contest? Because it does make a difference. Let me know the difference, and we can certainly answer that for you.
Yep. Let's see. I think I'm all caught up. All right, let's go.
Did you get Sankey's question?
No. Hopkins or Woods, considering the weather and season long.
Dude, I mean, it seems rough, right? Like, just like if you ask this question in August, you're like, I'm definitely playing DeAndre Hopkins every single time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you gotta go Robert Woods. That sounds crazy, but I think you gotta go Robert Woods here.
Okay. And says it's a 3 entry max.
Okay. Yeah, and so three max, those are the larger contests that normally falls under our high risk lineup construction criteria that we live by. So you want to get at least one pass catcher with Lamar Jackson. So either Marquise or Mark Andrews. Ideally, you get both, and then you run him back with a Chargers player. So a 3-1 game stack. That gives you the most upside, the best chance of winning that contest. As far as Daryl Henderson goes, we love him this week, and he's a fantastic play. So you can definitely play him in any of your 3 max lineups.
Yep. Ed says, who's your most exposed player, and who are you playing that we shouldn't? AKA, who am I going to go all in because you said I shouldn't?
So for me this week, I think Moose will probably be similar in the fact that Kareem Hunt, Khalil Herbert, those types of guys will be heavy exposure for us. So definitely follow suit there. As far as who am I playing that we shouldn't, I guess it's Nelson Aguilar, who I don't think many people are expected to like to play because he hasn't done much in the last couple of weeks. Yeah, we have projected 3% on DraftKings, 1% on FanDuel. But again, he's in a high total game. The total's moving up, and he's one of our underperforming wide receivers. Hasn't scored a touchdown in I can't remember how long. He's due for a game where, and you got to figure at his price, even if if he just goes like 5 for 50 in a touchdown, 16 points at 4K, that's certainly enough. And so I think Aguilar is probably the answer to that question.
One person that stuck out to me that it kept showing up in my builds, and I don't like it, so I gotta do some tweaking on that. Is Chuba? I mean, maybe he's just I'm sick from that first game when CMC was 90%, and I played him instead of CMC, and he just scored a point and a half.
Right.
I don't know if I'm still salty about that, but um, I don't know. I just don't think he can get there.
So here's the thing for me, and I think I'm a little more on board than you are, Moose, is when Chuba got that first start for CMC after CMC left. Everyone expected Chuba to be 3-down running back, just CMC role, right? Just like CMC light. But for whatever reason, Rodney Smith got 2-down or 3rd-down work, 2-minute drill work. And we're like, I didn't even know this guy was on the roster. Why is he getting passing game work over Chuba Hubbard? Then they released Rodney Smith. I gotta check to make sure they haven't brought him back in the last couple of days because they put McCaffrey on IR this morning.
Mm-hmm.
If they brought Rodney Smith back, then that still holds true. But if Rodney Smith is off the roster, like that's full on Chuba. Obviously, Royce Freeman's gonna mix in, but I think his upside's a little bit higher than what we saw that first game where he started for McCaffrey.
Let's hope so. All right, let's see. Let's knock out these last questions, and then we'll get up out of here. Robbie Anderson or Aguilar? I think you said Aguilar, right?
I actually prefer Robbie Anderson in that group. 100 plus air yards 2 of the last 3 games. They literally the last 2 weeks, all they've been talking about is they need to get him the ball and make him score, right? Like literally they're talking about it. Should have had a 60-yard touchdown last week. Darnold underthrew him by about 5 yards. So you had the underperforming wide receiver aspect into the squeaky wheel narrative. I don't even have the right tab up here. I'm trying to see his projected ownership. I think it's super low. Robbie Anderson is 4% on DraftKings, 3% on FanDuel. Yeah, we're all over that.
Nice. Let's see. Yeah, and Ed, I don't know who Bobby Anderson is. I'm joking with you. Ken says, with how cheap the running backs are you relaxing the Curtis Samuel theory a bit this week?
Fantastic question. I think you can, especially if you're hand building, right? And I think this also, Moose, you and I were talking about right before the show started. I think this is a week where you can actually flex running backs a little more than you might otherwise consider, even on DraftKings, because it kind of takes the place of that Curtis Samuel theory because we get Khalil Herbert type guys. So that's a really sharp line of thinking, Ken, and I agree with it.
Yeah. Sharp and Ken is usually going hand to hand, as I've noticed.
For sure.
DFS, who's the cheaper running back you think that busts this week?
I will say, just looking. I guess the most likely is probably Devontae Booker at 5,400, just because he's not good. Him or Daryl Williams, just because that role could shift a little bit, but those are the 2 guys I would pick for that question.
Yeah. Let's see. All right. Hawk Dog says thoughts on Tanyan. He's good.
UPT, baby. We're on him this week.
Yeah. Wayne says, sorry for the off-topic question. Where's the MMA fight video this week? There's no video this week on the shorter slates, but should be back. We'll be back up next week.
Yeah, Wayne, make sure you join the Discord, which if you guys haven't already, click the join button below here or reach out to us. But yeah, I think Jake put a note in the chat this morning. Any slate that's 10 games or less, we're not doing MMA videos anymore just because, those slates are so stupid. It's a pain in the ass.
Yep. Chris says, any values for specific sites that stand out as better than the people should be aware of?
Fantastic question. I think Khalil Herbert's just a little bit better value on DraftKings. 5,500 is just amazing on FanDuel. But we do have Daryl Williams there, 5,200. You can pay up to 6K for a couple guys. Um, I admittedly haven't looked at it yet and haven't built my lineups to that extent yet, so I really can't give that much of an intelligent answer, but it's a great question, Chris.
It's true. All right, let's knock out these last questions. We'll get up out of here. Jake, more concerned about Tyreek or McLaurin's health?
McLaurin for sure. Hamstring tightness never great. It sounds precautionary. I think he's fine, but Tyreek's injury was a quad contusion, which if he comes back to practice, it's generally a very minor injury. So I'm definitely more on the side of Tyreek being okay.
Matt says still double stacking tight ends on Yahoo this week. You can do that. I actually didn't know that was a thing.
Tight ends or quarterbacks?
Quarterbacks. Did I not? Is that what I said?
You said tight ends, and I was like, never double stacking tight ends. I assume Matt means two receivers with a quarterback, and I am just because of Khalil Herbert's price over there and some of those other guys. It's cheap enough value this week where you can still do it.
I was gonna say I need to move over to Yahoo ASAP if I'm game stacking with quarterbacks.
Yeah, college football style.
Definitely. Yeah, and he clarified. Yeah, that's what he meant. My bad, Matt. And the last question here from Brian: wouldn't flexing wide receiver help you stay different then?
No, don't we see that wide receivers are the most flex position, right? When we do our analysis every Tuesday.
It flip flops around for the most part, yeah. But yeah.
I maybe so this week, Brian. But again, it's not like it's like a massive leverage spot. I mean, we're talking like 60 versus 40%, give or take. You can certainly do it. I mean, I probably will have a good amount of those with game stacks. So,
I don't think there's necessarily a hard rule that you need to do more running. Like if you're making multiple lineups, or if you're just like hand building a couple of lineups, you don't have to force a running back in all of them. Like if it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, you can go wide receiver. Like whatever works out for you.
Right, and I'll finish off with this final point, Moose. Right, like if you're game stacking, you're automatically different, just based on the field. So, I don't really think you have to think too. And again, this is crazy because it's such a complicated sport, and people talk about how hard NFL is, and we talk about so many different ways to get different in other sports. Like you don't have to think that much in NFL. You just game stack, play the best plays. You're somehow different. So, just keep doing that.
Yep. And actually, last thing from Matt is Daryl Williams versus Robbie Anderson and utility spot on the DraftKings is the question. I'll go with the underperforming wide receiver and high risk.
I'm with it. I agree with you for sure.
So, awesome everyone that has been here, that's talked, or if you're just watching, or if you're watching this on replay. If you have questions, go ahead and comment down below. If you like what you saw here, you're new here, click the like button, hit the subscribe button. Again, you can check out the daily plug and Occupy Models at OccupyFantasy.com. We'll be back again on Tuesday where Brian and I talk about his 150 lineups, see what he did right, what he did wrong, look at what other pros did, and have a whole bunch of fun. Until next time, Moose and Brian from Occupy Fantasy, have a good night.